Decided to do this with Pat. Pat Riley, we love talking to him, and we decided, you know what? Let's do a podcast because we're going to invite other people on the podcast. But you have a story today, Pat, and look at what you're wearing, the hat. The
Hmm.
hat is the story. So tell me it.
The hat is the story, and it's a great story because several years ago I worked for a company called Pitney Bowes, and I had a pretty good team. We did the whole west side of the United States, basically Missouri, all the way over to Alaska and Hawaii. So I had quite a few people working for me. It was a great organization, and one of my uh, people that worked for me, she is still with them, and she's traveling throughout Europe, going to different military bases, primarily Navy bases, and training them on how to use mailing equipment. And I have her on Facebook. We're still good friends. And she popped up, she had a great picture, and it was the silhouette of the Mount Whitney, which is the book that Deception Underway takes place on. So that's the big tie-in there that I served on the Mount Whitney from 1992 to 1994. I never kept the hat because I was a little disgruntled. I probably pitched the hat. I still have my hats from the Towers and the Hewitt. Those are probably displayed, but I never had that Mount Whitney hat. So when she had that picture of it in the background on that Navy base in Italy, I just said, can you go and get me a hat? I need a hat. I haven't had a hat in a while. I'm not going on Amazon or eBay to buy a hat. I want one right off the ship. Unfortunately, she couldn't go back on the base because she only had that short amount of time, but she contacted the people she trained, said, can you go on the quarterdeck? Because that was my instructions. Just have them go on the quarterdeck, ask the officer on deck if they can buy a hat. Me, so what a great way to get a hat. It does have the scrambled eggs on it, so I'm not an admiral, but damn it, I've been in long enough. I'm a civilian. I've been a civilian for 32 years. I can have scrambled eggs on my hat. I don't care.
Wow. Okay. That's an awesome story. And now you're wearing this hat proudly. Is that just
Mhm.
because of Deception Underway?
It is. It is just because I wrote so much about it, and I kind of my pain has subsided. I feel good, and I do need to reach out to several of my fellow shipmates on the Mount Whitney and talk to them. I want to get them on the podcast. But if anybody else has good sea stories, I can talk for an hour. I can ask you questions for an hour. We can go longer if you'd like, but if you have any interest in joining me on my podcast, the World's Finest Strike podcast, also on YouTube, it's Underway Books. Just contact me, and we can get that scheduled. I'd love to have you. Just need a microphone, need a camera, and we can talk for an hour. I just want to hear your story. Why did you join the military? What did you do in the Navy? Primarily Navy, Marines, great. And the reason why I talk to the Marines is because if they went out to sea with the Navy, I like to hear those sea stories. Even if you're Air Force or Army or Coast Guard, anybody that has served our country and has been overseas, that's the type of stories I want to hear. Sure, if you served in Michigan and you were born and raised in Michigan, you might not have the greatest stories, but if you were able to travel the world and give me some good content, that is what I'm looking for.
So, talking about sea stories, we talked about this many different times. Now, I'm liking some of these stories now, creating these clips for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, from the podcast,
Mhm.
some real fun stories, right?
Mhm.
That's and sea stories can be where you're on, when you dock off a ship, it
Mhm.
sounds like.
Well, that's what I'm looking for because granted, if you're out to sea, you do a lot of circles, you look for a lot of nothing. It's not that exciting. Some of the excitement at sea is maybe doing some weapons testing or training. If you're launching missiles, if you're running it through a gun range and shooting off 5-inch rounds at targets on land, great. That's the exciting part. But normally it's pretty dull. If it's in the middle of the night and you're just cruising along, there's not much happening. And if you're looking at the control consoles, it can get a little monotonous, but it is the job. That's what you have to do. The sea stories really come into play when you are on shore. What do you do? You're going out drinking with your friends. Sometimes those stories can get a little raunchy. we tone it down a little bit on this show. I'm still trying to figure out how to take those maybe an after hours clip and monetize that where it's behind a paywall. And hey, if you want the good stories, we can tell you some good stories. Granted, I've got the good stories. I haven't told them. I might have insinuated some of them, but they're out there. Yeah, I can't even say it on these podcasts.
No,
So,
we definitely
yeah.
are not. But what do you think is the reason? Because being on a ship for so many hours, once you finally get off, it's like, let's go do something, especially when you're
Yeah,
young and you're like, okay, we've
absolutely.
been stuck on a ship
Uh-huh.
versus it's the same thing as a base in a way, but you don't think so because the base, at least you can get off. When
Yes.
you're on a
Mhm.
ship, you're stuck there for how many
Yeah,
days sometimes before you find land?
sure. Well, in general, if you're stationed in San Diego and you do a Westpac, that's a 6 month Westpac. But there's times that you could be out to sea for 2 to 3 weeks, usually at the max. When I was in the Red Sea, we would do 2 weeks at sea and then back in the port for a couple days, then back out to sea. Or actually, I think we were doing 4 weeks. But still, you were out to sea for 4 weeks, and it's fun because when you come back in, you have two paychecks kind of burning a hole in your pocket. So you kind of forced to save all that money. And you get into port, you're with your friends. Hey, let's go drinking. Fun ensues after hitting the bars. And especially those ports in the is it Southeast Asia, those are always fun. Australia is a blast. When you go over into Europe with a Mediterranean cruise, those are great as well because you'll hit Italy, Spain. I'm sure there's a lot of other ports over there that I haven't been to because when I was an East Coast sailor, I went up north to the North Atlantic. So we hit Ireland, Norway, and Germany, which they were great. And granted, Ireland has a lot of bars, and I even have a chapter in Deception Underway talking. Actually, I got a couple chapters in there about Ireland, but one's called The Redheads of Ireland. That's always a great chapter in Deception Underway. So, kind of saying
Can you
the
get a
sort of
little
red.
more raunchy when you write?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. But I did tone it down in the writing because I could have gone um, a lot deeper with the story in Deception Underway because it was based on a real life story. I didn't want to air my dirty laundry out there. I didn't, and I always thought like, what if somebody picks this up from Hallmark Channel? I'd rather tell a story and have Hallmark Channel buy it, and instead of like Skinamax, I could have gone that way. That would have been a little different, but yeah, it was
So
fun.
why is it that when you dock, you have to have a uniform when you're out and
You
about?
don't. You
It used to
don't.
be, right?
Only generally it would be the first day. That was kind of the unwritten rule. Your first day in port, everybody would go out in uniform. It was a big celebration because there was a celebration in Japan called the Black Ship Festival, and that was a week-long fest. We were uh, just anchored offshore, and I cannot remember the name of the city, but it wasn't too far from where we were in Tokyo. But when we went into town, all since it was a celebration, we did have to wear our whites. But then usually, like I said, if we pulled in Australia, I remember first night wore the whites. But then if we get into like places like the Philippines or Thailand or even Hong Kong, we wouldn't. We would man the rails in our uniforms. In the Philippines, we didn't, primarily because that was a Navy base.
Right.
That was a U.S. naval facility. We pulled in, we got work done, and then when we went out to town, we just wore shorts, t-shirts, whatever, and just went out in town. That would in different places. I think there was some people whenever they pulled in Japan, like occasionally they'd wear it, but again, it was a Navy base, so why would we wear our uniform out in town? So it didn't happen that often. I think I did in Ireland the first day, Germany for the first day. So, but you stand out
Oh,
like like a sore thumb. But
yeah.
it's
So
fun
where do you when you dock? Do you stay in the ship or do you stay in a hotel?
either or. Because if you have the money and you want to stay out in town, you can. But most of us, we didn't have the money, so we would just crawl back to the ship and sleep it off, and then
Were there
try to get.
rules when you had to go back on the ship?
No, no, there's no rules. I mean, just standard rules. Just don't throw up on the quarterdeck. So, but yeah, it was fun. That was the adventure. That's what we enjoyed, going out to town, just seeing the sights. And if you were in uniform, like I said, you stood out. Uh, the ladies did like that, so that was always good. But then, of course, you always had to compete if you were in a larger battle group and the Marines were there, perhaps,
Oh boy.
then their uniforms look a lot better than the Navy uniforms, unfortunately. It is what it is. I admit it.
Do you feel when you would doc how difficult and challenging was different cultures to learn different cultures at first?
They always gave us kind of a briefing before we pulled in. For example, Singapore was one of those ports where it's very strict. You can't, for example, if you chew gum, don't spit out the gum, don't litter, flush the toilets. I mean, that was a thing. You had to flush the toilets. But there were so many rules because it's a very clean city, but they are strict in their enforcement. So they said if we got in any sort of trouble, we couldn't help. So there's certain things that
Wow.
the U.S. government can help you with different treaties, but in Singapore we didn't have those treaties. So one of the things, this is the book that I'm writing, Fight Underway, where it takes place. There's a part of it in Malaysia and also Singapore. So when we pulled into Singapore, they made it known, do not do anything with drugs because it is a capital offense and that it carries a death penalty. So very clear, don't do anything with drugs. We stay away from that. And back in the mid 90s, there was an issue where a kid spray painted a Mercedes, and he was an American kid. His parents were there because his dad was working in Singapore at the time there, but he got in trouble. And so the punishment was he was going to get caned. And everybody was up in arms, like, how can you cane this 16-year-old when he might not know the rules? Really? Where is it okay to spray paint a Mercedes?
So
That's
do
not
they
right.
cane you for spitting out gum?
I don't know. They probably write you a ticket. I don't
Is
know
it
what the.
still this strict,
Oh yeah,
Singapore?
sure is. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's still known as one of the cleanest cities in the world. You can't keep it that clean unless you have enforcement,
Like
and it's very safe.
caning, do they put you to death for certain things?
Drugs,
Really?
drugs. Yep. And so that
Wow.
was part, like I said, fight underway. So that third book that I'm writing, that is takes place in Southeast Asia, and that was one of the premises and one of the stories I heard a long time ago. It's back in the mid to late 80s, but two different foreigners got executed for smuggling drugs out of Malaysia. And one was out of the UK, the other was out of Australia. But they were trying to smuggle drugs out of Malaysia. They got caught and they were actually executed, and there was nothing their home countries could do about it. That was their rules. So I know Singapore is the exact same way.
Wow. And see, that's interesting. You learn about those cultures. Did you dock all over the world? Did you get the
Pretty much.
opportunity? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Like I said, if I can run through all the countries, Japan, Korea, Okinawa, Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, Oman, Bahrain, Kenya, so Africa, there we go. Egypt, we had two different ports in Egypt.
Wow.
Let's see, and then Ireland, Cuba. We did exercises in Cuba, also in the book for Deception Underway, and then Norway and Germany. We did pull into the UK just for I think fuel. I don't even know why we pulled into the UK, but we didn't have Liberty. We pulled in, pulled out.
So you've learned so much about culture. Where do you think that helps in your job every day? Mhm.
It's just understanding of, the world, the curiosity. That's what really, when you travel so much and you learn the different cultures, you get that curiosity about, okay, why are they doing it this way? What are they doing this way? And I've heard this before with Japan, for example. In Japan, we do it this way. Great. They don't do that in the US. It is what it is. I'm not playing the game where Japan does it this way, so we're superior. Yeah,
Okay.
no, you've got your own little things, but those are the things I've learned over the years. When I did live there, I'd hear, oh, in Japan, we do it this way. Okay, great, I'll honor that. And over the years, you get to the point where you're like, you know what? Great. You do you in Japan. I'm from the US, I do it my way. So
Wow. Okay.
that's the way we are.
All right. So if you have sea stories, if you've been in on the sea and you port, you're a perfect guest for Pat Riley. So the best place people can go and contact you. Where do you want people to contact you if they want to be a guest?
Oh, geez. I've got just go to my website. I have a contact page in there, underwaybooks.com. I'm also on YouTube at Underway Books, and then Spotify, World's Finest Strike Podcast, and then also Apple, World's Finest Strike Podcast. But then I believe I do have author at underwaybooks.com. That's my website. So it, I'm very accessible. I'm also on Facebook, Patrick Riley, author. I'm out there.
All right. That was the special simulcast. You never thought you were going to hear that, but you now are. The Neil Haley Show and the world's finest strike podcast, guys. Take care. And we